And good morning. Today is Thursday. You're listening to AVNewsCast on News Talk Radio 1380, the number one News Talk radio program in the Antelope Valley. We've got a really great show today, Angelina.
Yeah, it's an emotional show today.
Yeah, it's going to be. Now, Angelina and I are here at the radio station. We have a guest that we're going to bring on in a minute. Jeff is over at AVNewsCast headquarters in Lancaster.
Yes, he is.
So if you are online, you'll probably see Jeff, and we're going to have Jeff on the show as well. We'll tie him in over the phone line. Many of you, I've got a weird sound coming through my microphone. That's better. Many of you will remember back in May when Gabriel Fernandez, a little 8-year-old child from the city of Palmdale, passed away. Gabriel Fernandez was allegedly tortured.
Allegedly.
I'm saying that because...
Well, I'm going to keep it real.
Okay, okay. At the hands of his mother and the mother's boyfriend. On the show today, we have Gabriel's grandfather, Robert Fernandez. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, behind Robert, we've got a whole team of attorneys here in the radio station, which I didn't know we were going to be having, but that's okay, and we welcome it because it's all good. And if we can bring them on a little bit later and they can talk as well. Robert, I understand now, and there's also another woman that's here, Sherry, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And she's had an experience.
She has, and we'll talk about that first. But, you know, I want to talk to you, Robert, because what happened to your grandson was terrible. It was a travesty. It's something that hit everybody in the Antelope Valley, and everybody all over America has been following this case because it's something that never, ever should have happened.
It's disgusting. I just don't even... I don't know. I mean, when you hear about the story, it's almost like you can't grab it to believe that it's part of reality. Robert, can you take us back to the beginning of it? When did you notice the problem? You know, can you tell us a little bit, more about firsthand what went on really?
It happened, in regards, with the sheriff department, one of the officers, and that's what really triggered my daughter of having my grandson. She had him at all since he was born. She rejected him. She said she didn't love him. So in the end, we ended up with him, and I remember the day that she took him, and I started hearing about the abuse. My wife, she's in dialysis, and she can't hardly do much for herself, but my grandson was always there for her. Pray, water, whatever she needed, he was always there. And there was one time she called me up and said about a burn on the foot. And when he had the opportunity to come and visit, because it was always, we had to kind of like play along with her because we knew that if we said something, she wouldn't bring him around.
Right.
I thought even about kidnapping him, I wanted to go that way. And
if it was me, I would have.
Yeah, I
know. But you know what? Hindsight is always 20/20, and you never think that the reality is really what the reality is until it's all said and done.
Well, Gabriel's teacher even said, that she was so frustrated that the only thing left that she could have done, maybe, would have been to kidnap this child.
Right.
Yeah, and I was at that point too, but then again, I thought about my wife and the consequences behind kidnapping, and I understand it's something to do with to give you life at that. So I listened to what she was doing, and sometimes I'd go and visit her. I wouldn't get off the apartment. I'd stay in the van. I went several times, and the day it happened, it was on my birthday. One day at 11 o'clock, she called the ambulance, and I found out the next day, and it was weird because I heard it through the radio station that there was a kid, an 8-year-old kid, had been abused by the mother and the boyfriend, and right away I thought about my grandson. I was driving to the high school to go and pick up my 17-year-old daughter. When I asked her, I had heard this in the radio, what address And she says, Dad, I don't know the address. And from that point on, I kind of already knew what was going on. But I thought, with the welfare, or these welfare people, the DFS, and I've heard about the sheriffs being there too, that they're going to do a job,
Now, did you call and report her based on prior injuries that you saw, Gabriel?
Actually, my wife did. She tried. She's blind by one eye, and she can hardly see. But she also called my sister-in-law, and she did call several times. I understand too, and I thank the teacher for doing that, for stepping up and talking about what she'd seen and reported. Some neighbors, they called, so my understanding, there was like 62 calls.
Why do you think your daughter wanted to keep her son if she really wasn't into him? What was the motivation?
I don't know. I to this day, I think it's something that she kind of held towards my wife. I don't think she really loved me either. I remember the day, like 3 days prior to that day of them being arrested, I called her up because he had a burn on top of his foot, and she had told these people that she had bought him some new shoes, and it was some type of blister, but it was outrageous. It was too big of a blister. So I called her up, and I screamed from the top of my lungs, and I told her, one of these days the sheriffs are going to come and arrest you and your boyfriend, for the things you've done, and they're going to be able, Gabriel, Ezekiel, and Virginia is going to sit there and tell them what you've been doing.
Now, you mentioned the other children. What are their ages, and how are they involved, or did they feel the wrath of your daughter's anger? How did that happen with them?
Well, Virginia, the day because my daughter did come to live with us over here in Palmdale, she suggested that, because I'm from the valley, she said that Palmdale had cheaper rent, so we decided to come live up here. And she followed 3-4 months later, and she ended up there at my house, and she told me she wanted to bond with Gabriel, and I didn't see no bonding. There were times that, I'd find him in the living room sleeping by himself. So I'd get in her face, and I'd tell her, you wanted to bond, and you got Ezekiel, and you got Virginia, and what's with Gabriel, why is he there? So I'd grab a couple of pillows off the couch and put him in my room, and he'll lay down in our room. There's things that she just, just times that I found her slapping Virginia real hard, and that just ticked me off, and I got in her face, and she'll sit and says, you're not the father, this, that, and, so you need to stay out of it. So
she was abusive to all three of the children?
Yeah, she was abusive. Yeah.
Now, there were a lot of, Robert, there were a lot of calls that went into child services, as well as the sheriff's department. And we've had Captain Don Ford from the Palmdale Sheriff's Station on before, and we now understand that when a call does go in to child services, for instance, the sheriff's department has no way of knowing, because it doesn't come up on anything that they have. They have no way of knowing really where these calls come in, because the calls aren't all connected to a physical person, for instance. They're connected to an address, and then it's connected to an agency. So, if a teacher was to call in, for instance, and report something about Gabriel, that report goes to the school address. And then if a neighbor calls in from Gabriel's apartment building, that report goes to that address. But the sheriff's department can't tie it all to an 8-year-old child that's in distress.
That is so ridiculous.
But
we have Excel sheets that are better organized than what you just described.
You know what?
And for us to be in 2013 and dealing with children, that's appalling, and there's no excuse for that.
And they're talking about changing that. I get it, and it is terrible.
About it. I'm sorry. I forgot. They're talking about it.
Well, somebody dropped the ball when it came to that technology.
Just a little bit.
I know. But, Robert, where do you think the ball got dropped? Because we know there were a lot of calls that came in. Even Gabriel's teacher called in. I know, you may have even called in, but there were a lot of calls that went in reporting that Gabriel was being abused. Where do you think it got dropped? Because investigators from Child Services even went to the apartment to physically examine him.
And left.
And, yeah, I think it began from the day one. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to pick up a shirt or take off the pants and see bruises or cuts. My daughter, there's one time my son she claimed that he had fell off the bunk beds, and there were some bicycles, she said, and they were right by the bed, and he ended up falling, and he got a cut on his head, and that's what she told these people, that he had fell off. So they recommended that they should get rid of the bikes and maybe get some beds. When I went, because I had to go and clean her apartment, I spent like 2 days cleaning out that apartment. And I remember seeing the beds. There was no box spring. They were on the floor. Most of the beds were on the floor. It was a 3-bedroom apartment. And I don't know.
What's your relationship with your daughter now?
I love her. She's my daughter. I can't take that away. I love her and I forgive her. I forgive the boyfriend. I have to.
Okay.
You know what? Just on that note, because I couldn't myself, and we can talk more about that. We need to take a quick break. All right, let's just take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Robert Fernandez. You're listening to AVNewsCast, the #1 news talk radio program in the Antelope Valley, and we'll be right back.
There's a school in Palmdale that's become the talk of the town. It's called the Guidance Charter School, and many parents say it's magical. The Guidance Charter School is WASC certified, scored 783 in academic performance, and has an educational curriculum that exceeds what the state of California recommends. The curriculum is enriched through age-appropriate exposure for information technology, arts, foreign language such as Arabic, and physical education. The Guidance Charter School is now going to have a full CIF sports program with soccer, basketball, track, cheerleading, and more. They're an open enrollment school, publicly funded, and have been in business for 12 years, fully approved by Palmdale School District. The Guidance Charter School has small class sizes such as 20 students in grades K through 3, 25 in 4 through 8, and just 30 students in grades 9 through 12. Call the Guidance Charter School in Palmdale today at 661-272-1701. That's the Guidance Charter School in Palmdale, 661-272-1701. And check out their website at thegcs.org. A better high school choice.
Hi, this is Eric Darnell.
This is David Reagan.
Jamie McMurray. This is Carl Edwards here for RED,
the entertainment industry's voice for road safety.
Want to make a difference? It's simple. Be responsible.
Plan ahead. Designate before you celebrate.
Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
And we're back. Thank you so much for listening. We're live here with Gabriel's grandfather, and he just opened my eyes a little bit. I don't know if I could say he opened up my eyes, because we do hear it quite often. Steve, you mentioned it before, that when you go through something so horrific, you can still have that compassion in your heart to forgive. I don't know how it works. I just want to hear that's how he feels. I can't criticize it. I can't dissect it, because I can't even fathom it.
Okay, and that's a power far greater than anything that I can comprehend. But but at the same time, there is a level where the forgiveness stops, because clearly there's not a whole lot of forgiveness, because right behind us, we got a whole team of 3 attorneys behind us here that are all representing Robert.
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with his daughter.
No.
That has to do with the system, which I would never forgive that system either. They had no vesting interest. Their job is to protect children. That's what they're there for. There is to protect children.
So is a parent.
I understand, but without the emotion, that entity is there to protect children.
Okay, well, we know that entity, Child Services, dropped the ball.
Dropped all of the ball.
Tremendously, okay? And Robert, at the end of the day, you have to admit that that's really, investigators went to the house and physically examined, from what I understand, physically examined Gabriel and determined that everything was fine. I heard a story that Gabriel was put in the back of a police car and asked if he was being abused, and told if he lies about being abused anymore, he could go to jail. Have you heard that story, Robert?
Yeah, I did. I heard it from the neighbors. Some of the neighbors actually seen my grandson sometimes go out and throw out the trash, and the way she did with him at night, it was like 8, 9 o'clock, and she would dress him in a dress and humiliate him. I don't know why she was doing this. So,
to punish him?
I think mentally she tore him down. Not only did she murder him, but she broke him down. I think so.
I saw some pictures that were taken of him at school. And he had a big smile, but you could see physically, you could see that his face was swollen. You could see that he was abused. You could see bruises.
You could see confusion. Because, he's 8 years old and he doesn't get it. He didn't get it. Is this normal? Is this what life is?
Right. Now, was it when this was going on, Robert, was there no way that you could intercede and take Gabriel from your daughter?
Well, I did. Like I said, I thought about kidnapping him. I even went to a corner that I had heard that he had been dropped off, but I also heard that one of the reasons she wouldn't let him out of her apartment, she knew that I was probably even thinking about it, and he hardly went out at all. The day that it happened, we had about a month and a half of not seeing him. She had gone to the school where he was going and took him out and said that she was going to take him to Texas, send him to Texas with the other grandparents. And the times that we did talk to her, she'd sit there and say, they're over there with the boyfriend's parents because they were on vacations at the time. So that was about a month and a half, a month that we hadn't seen him. So,
How long was she with this boyfriend? Do you know much about him and his background?
No, actually, I think it might have been like 2 years. He's from Palmdale. I know the parents. They moved to, I think, Newhall, Valencia, maybe a month before, like 4 or 5 months ago they moved. Mm-hmm. And I know that he took care of elderly people. He was working with 2 or 3 clients of his. I never really saw him drink. Mm-hmm. I never really saw him angry. Drugs he did not do. I know that for a fact.
So do you think that he shared in this abuse, or do you think your daughter was alone with it?
Well, the times that my grandson did go over there, and when I was at work and talked to Grandma, he'd explain things that were happening, and I know for a fact that he did participate in most of it.
Okay. At the end of the day, you hold Child Services responsible for this, yes?
I'm the Sheriff's Department. If the deputy that went to my house that day, because I was moving out, I couldn't afford the rent, and I was going to a smaller house. He came with my daughter, and I looked through the window because she was taking her stuff out of her room because she had moved to that apartment right there. And when I seen through the window, I seen her talking to the deputy for about 10 minutes, and then she comes in with him, and he says, she needs to take her stuff out. Would it be all right? So I took the opportunity to tell him about that slap, about what she had did to my granddaughter Virginia, and we showed him some paperwork, and and he just dismissed it and said it was something that we had made up. It was he should have listened. We had the paperwork, we had guardianship over him for almost 8 years.
Oh, you had guardianship over him. So how did she get him if you had that?
The day that happened is they asked if they could go to a barbecue where the boyfriend was living at. He'd live about 4 blocks away. And me and Gabriel, I thought right away, we went to the store, just me and him. And we went around the corner, and I didn't see no barbecue at his yard. So I came back home, and I confronted her and her boyfriend. I says, I don't see no barbecue out there. It was on a Sunday. And the boyfriend turns around and says, you know what, it's inside the house. And I said, you know what, I still thought about it. And I thought, okay, right there, here, He said, okay, go ahead and take it, because I'm going to take him to school on Monday. It was on a Sunday. And from that point on, they didn't return with them. She stayed at the parents' house, and I figured I'd just wait, and she never returned with them.
It seems that if you had guardianship, you would have the right to be able to go pick them up. Is that not what it means when you have guardianship?
Well, the way the deputy explained it, we had showed them the paperwork, because the welfare department does, they were helping us with, money and stuff like that. So we showed them a paper of what she had signed almost 8 years ago, and it was a, I'm trying to remember.
A notary?
Yeah.
So she signed something and had it notarized that you could raise the baby.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything that was done in the court system. It was just something that she signed.
Well, that I think that opposed in court systems too, because the day these grandparents from Texas, they came out of nowhere when they had found out the tragedy. They had to go, and I think they might have done a notary public and went to the dad. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he's the biological dad, but they had him signed to release Gabriel's body.
That it brings me to something that I'm a little uncomfortable about asking you, because it's not an issue to me at all. But I know that there's an issue out there to some of the listeners, so I feel that I need to ask you this. After he passed, there was a lot of people that donated funds because they thought that the funds were going to go to burying Gabriel. And there's been a lot of speculation, there's been a lot of conversation about where these funds went. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did receive? I don't necessarily care about the monetary value, but what happened to the money that was donated towards his burial?
Well, actually, my wife has a family member that brought up Gabriel's Justice. She never called us to inform us about what she was doing.
Is it Emily?
Yes, it's Emily, and there's another friend of hers that was with her. I'm trying to remember her name, but at the same time, we met at the first rally I did in front of the sheriff's department, and she told me that it was her. She had did that for us. So in the end, after the rally, she told me, Robert, if anything I could help, if it's money, otherwise, just give me a call. So 2 or 3 weeks later, I had to call her because I seen the sheriff's department going back and forth. So I thought, maybe they're going to harass. So I called Emily up and I asked her, is there any way I could get $1,000? I think it was $1,000, $2,000. I think it was like $1,000 to buy some cameras, put some monitors around my house, because I was thinking about what was happening with the sheriffs, because I've heard that the sheriffs do harass people. As a matter of fact, they're being investigated right now for that reason. But either way, that's what I told her. She says, you know what, I can't do that. The money that's being funded, I have to answer to that. I said, okay then. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. Okay. I never said anything else. She did the activities, the events, the car wash, and I went to I did a candle visual in the school, because they wouldn't let Gabriel have a plaque. The teacher wanted a plaque for him. The school board said no. So we ended up 2 days later up there, and there was a lot of people there and supported us. I ended up here at my daughter's apartment doing another visual. And maybe about a couple of days later, she tells me that there was going to be a car wash. Emily did, and she said she could use all that funds for that reason. And 90%, 95% of the people that was at the car wash, they'd actually come up and say, this is for the family, this is for you. I understand if you're going to give money to Gabriel's Justice, you sign a check and you send it to that address, right? And so I took it as that. And the following day, which was June the 1st, the car wash. June the 2nd, there was a car show. And in that car show, they were going to present me another check. I'm not there for money, okay, in the first place. Money is not going to change the fact that my grandson is dead. That's not going to change anything. What I was there for is his voice, and the others that have been abused or murdered. And one of the guys, Montoya, He's a brown, green beret. I don't know what he is. He was there, and he confronted me, and he says, you know what? I've heard that somebody or your family, maybe you, are going to beat up Emily. And I said, what are you talking about? I'm here to talk about Gabriel, and that's really it. And he says, well, I know hold the check, and I know this and that. I says, go ahead and keep your check, do what you're going to want to do with it, and that was basically it.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I feel bad that I even had to ask you, but I felt that, because there are people out there that were curious, we better get it from the horse's mouth. But let's not even focus anymore on that, because that's irrelevant and has nothing to do with the actual tragedy. So I don't want to put too much light on that.
No, but we need to take a break for just a second. And when we come back, I do want to talk about the fact that clearly, because we've got a room full of attorneys, it looks like there's a lawsuit that's about to be mounted, so we need to touch on that too. So you're listening to AVNewsCast on News Talk Radio, 1380, the number one News Talk Radio program in the Antelope Valley, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Diane Caradu. I'm a senior Medicare Patrol volunteer. Our program, sponsored by Medicare and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, helps seniors learn to protect themselves from Medicare frauds and scams. For instance, if you're a Medicare beneficiary and you're approached with an offer of free medical equipment or services, watch out. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Call 1-800-MEDICARE to report it. And go to stopmedicarefraud.gov to find lots of useful tips and important information about new fraud-fighting tools that Medicare now has thanks to the healthcare law. New resources to help law enforcement crack down on criminals and return taxpayer dollars to the Medicare trust funds. And how you can get involved in the fight against fraud. Go to stopmedicarefraud.gov and help make Medicare stronger for all of us. A message from Medicare and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
If you're thinking about getting your backyard in shape for entertaining, there's only one place to shop, and that's Abadak Outdoors in Palmdale. At Abadak Outdoors in Palmdale, you'll save up to 70% off retail every day at our factory warehouse showroom. Abadak has everything you need to get your backyard in shape, like 7.5-foot tall, 41,000 BTU freestanding LPG patio heaters for just $159.99. How about a fully enclosed backyard gazebo? Fire up that barbecue and enjoy a nice meal inside one of our Mandalay, Trinidad, or Mykonos freestanding gazebos, just $219.97 every day. If you want wholesale prices, come to Abadak Outdoors in Palmdale. How about backyard shade or car canopies? You can pick a variety of color choices starting at just $129.97. Stop by Abadak Outdoors in Palmdale. We're located at 38940 Trade Center Drive, 1 block east of 10th Street West. The Abadak Factory Showroom is open from 8 to 4 every day. That's Abadak Outdoors at 38940 Trade Center Drive in Palmdale, where you'll save up to 70% off retail every day. Check us out on the web at abadak.com or give us a call on 480-1562.
And welcome back.
Robert, let me ask you a question, because I knew that you were coming on, and I'm grateful that you took the time to come here, and I know there's other things that you want to talk about, but I want to ask you about this. Right behind Angelina and I are 3 attorneys, so it looks to me like you've got a lawsuit that you're about to mount against Child Services. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I want to talk about my job before I quit. I'm a security officer. I've been for 23 years. And I've been, confronted or shot at, knives, fights. And my job was to prevent things from happening. My company was liable if I did do not my job. So I figure with these people that are going into people's houses and looking at these kids and everything else, they're liable. Our sheriff's department is liable too. So I not only think a lawsuit is good. I mean, it's like I said, it's not going to bring my grandson back, but it's going to help me to try to change the law. That's my focus right now. Where these people not only get a desk job but also get some type of, imprisonment or something.
Well, absolutely.
we've talked about it on the show that whoever the lead investigators were that were investigating the abuse charges for Gabriel, that completely whitewashed this and just swept everything under the rug. As far as I'm concerned, my personal feeling, yeah, you could take them to criminal court.
Absolutely.
Because what they did is so wrong.
Absolutely.
So wrong.
And this is a big job. This is not, I'm a checker at Walmart. Oh, I forgot to put your flour in your bag. These are lives. And, and we're putting you in a position of keeping America's children safe. And that's your job. And if you can't do it, either you have to quit, because, listen, I've had it up to here with these social workers are under stress and they have heart palpitations and blah, blah, blah. That's what it is. That's the job you chose. So if you can't do it, go home because you're not serving a purpose. And I could care less about your mortgage not getting paid because you need a job. I really can't. Your job is to make sure that kids that are in danger are taken care of. And if you can't do it, don't do it.
I agree. I agree 100%.
It's real simple. And you got to hold them accountable. And it's not about, people equate lawsuit with money, a check at the end of the day. But you know what? Not necessarily is that always the case. The bigger issue is whatever you guys think you're doing right is wrong. And for them to say, because I was at the city hall council meeting where the vice president of Child Protective Services got up there and said, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to change this. You know what? That's lip service.
Oh, and a blue panel.
Yeah,
you got a new blue ribbon panel.
It's lip service. You don't necessarily need someone with a master's degree or a bachelor's to be a social worker. Common sense doesn't come with a degree.
You don't need a master's degree to look at a child that's bruised and battered and determine that there's some abuse going on in the residence.
Nor do you need one to figure out that you can't have an agency checking an agency's work. That doesn't make sense. You can't tell me, Angelina, I want you to go to AVNC and audit your work. Okay, I'm going to do that for you. It was tighter than I thought it was. Of course I'm going to say that. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, I hear you. I understand. Sometimes you have to bring a lawsuit about to affect change, and that's what needs to happen here.
We also have another woman that's in the studio with us, Sherry Brown.
Sherry Martin.
Sherry Martin. I'm sorry, I'm renaming you. And I believe that you have quite of an experience as well. Now, was your experience having to do with Child Protective Services?
Stick around, Robert. Don't. I'm not letting you out yet.
Over for you, Robert. I just wanted to find out, Sherry, if you could share with us a little bit about what you experienced.
My son was shot and killed when he was at work by some people that had been out smoking, what do they call them? Anyway, there's a bunch of things that I learned during this, but he was shot and killed in front of his place of business where he worked. And
where was that, Sherry?
At Schooners.
At Schooners.
And it was over off of 15th Street.
Was your son one of the managers?
Yes.
I remember that very well.
He was the night manager. He brought in the entertainment in there. He was responsible. You didn't call them bouncers. They were customer service people. And that was his job. He got along with everybody, didn't judge anybody. There was no reason to have shot him. But they were high on peach brandy and I don't know what I forgot, blunts. I've never heard of that in my life. And so that's why I started the group of Antelope Valley chapter of Parents of Murdered Children.
Oh, got it. So you guys have met through the tragedy of his death, not necessarily that you went through something similar by means of your child being...
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, because we didn't know what to do, who do we talk to, how do we handle this, the court system's my friend. No. You're a number, they want to get you through, they will make plea deals, They will do anything that they can to rush that case through.
Yeah. Welcome to America.
Yeah. Well, I remember when that happened, Sherry. I remember that very well. Something that we were talking about before the show started was up here in the Antelope Valley, in various neighborhoods, they have what we call neighborhood houses. And I was at the Palmdale City Council meeting just a couple of weeks ago when they announced naming one of their neighborhood homes Gabriel's house.
Right.
Okay, which I thought was great. Robert, were you at that meeting?
No.
No.
I'd heard about it, but
You would think they'd let them know.
Well, because they said that when I talked to Mr. Miller said this Mr. Montoya didn't put, they were going to let him put the money in to help with the building of Gabriel's house. And he made it very clear that this was not Gabriel Fernandez's house. This was Gabriel that blew the trumpet.
I specifically heard council members and as well as the mayor and other people using Gabriel's name, Gabriel Fernandez.
Well, they said that kind of the way that I took it was that they were kind of thinking about him, but this was not his house because no money came from the city. Was absolutely doing this, and it had been in the making for a year or so since that house became available and it was given back to the city. So
well, we'll have to double check that.
I totally respect Mayor Ledford, but I know, and I'm not saying he's doing it, but I don't always believe politicians.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
We did go, me and Sherry, to the AV press. We went over there and I spoke that from the beginning, from after the car show, I wanted any type of event to stop. My grandson is not somebody you want to parade. I thank the mayor for what he's doing, but the thing is that all the other events, I was upset because one of the Emily, she was with her friend, was selling or in the internet pictures of my son for $1,000, and I didn't think that was right. That's one of the reasons I got into it with Emily. And in the end, we talked, and she said it was going to stop, but I don't think she was doing that.
This money has been so misappropriated. I heard from one of the people, I don't think I should mention names, but one of the people from the city told me, I said, there's so much money, and I don't know how much. He said, I had heard that there was a sum of $13,000.
See, well, when you play that telephone game and the dollars keep changing and they get larger as each person talks about it, because myself, I had heard around $5,000.
Well, that was what from Mr. Montoya from the car show. But the money, this Emily was responsible for Facebook, and there was money being brought into Facebook. They had a car show down in Sylmar. Wow. There was the car show the car wash that they had here. Somebody said that they wore so many cars they couldn't believe how many cars. The valley was very generous, and people would come to me and say, "Where's the money?" Well, you need to go back and ask the people that were responsible for these, because Robert didn't get it.
It gets convoluted. I mean, it's a terrible thing because people in the community, like myself, like everyone in this room, feel, your heart goes out and you want to do something. And, and then it gets all messy.
This gripped everybody, really, really hard, especially here at home in the Antelope Valley. I remember Angelina and I were at a candlelight vigil at Gabriel's school. And listening to his teacher talk. And you hear, you will hear of, somebody from the Lakers who gets their jersey retired.
Right.
Or Babe Ruth's jersey was retired. But when this teacher talks about this, he was her number such and such student.
And she retired the number.
And she retired that number, and no other student will ever have that number sitting in that seat in her class. That was really tough to listen to. It really was. On
And
that note,
and that's the bottom line. I'm sorry. I know we need to take a break.
we do. You're listening to AV Newscast on News Talk Radio 1380, and we'll be right back.
Hello again. This is Bob Alvis of AV Veterans Talk here on News Talk 1380. When you hear this,
Mustang 6 Golf Foxtrot cleared for takeoff.
that means you're getting ready to fly. And that's just what we do every Friday from 11 a.m. till noon, right between Dennis Miller and Sean Hannity. Each week, we fly right into the subjects that are important to our Valley's veterans and pay tribute to those who have served and sacrificed on behalf of our country. So tune in and join our formation. Check us out on Facebook at AV Veterans or call us at 266-4420. So for now, it's Wheels Up and Blue Skies. Bob out.
Hi, folks. I'm Chuck Simons, a realtor with Keller Williams. Are you finding yourself buried in your house payment, completely stressed out and don't know what to do? Please listen to what I'm about to tell you. First, understand that you are not the only one that's having problems. Many folks in the Antelope Valley are going through the same thing. What's most important right now is that you take control. Just because you've been turned down for a loan modification or received a notice of default doesn't mean you can't be in control. You own the property still. You can be in control, and I can help. I know how stressful it is. I know what it is to be in the dark on this. I've helped a lot of people in the Antelope Valley, but you have to take action. Call me, Chuck Simons, at 661-350-1006. I want to help you. My team and I will meet with you for free, and we'll go over your options. Don't just sit back, bury your head, and lose your house to foreclosure. I can help you, but you have to call. 661-350-1006. Together, we'll draw up a roadmap to relieving the stress. Just because you're not able to make the payments on your house doesn't mean you don't have options. You do. I can and I will help you negotiate a short sale with your bank. I'll explain all the benefits and how you can rebuild your credit. Call me, Chuck Simons, at 661-350-1006. Let's solve your problems together today.
And welcome back.
Hey, Robert, I've got a question. You've got your attorneys here, and I've got one of your attorneys actually standing right next to me. What's the purpose of the lawsuit? And you can respond to that. Your attorneys can respond to that. You know, what do you want to accomplish from this lawsuit?
I think it's to get people to realize that they got to be held accountable. I remember seeing the panel up there in Los Angeles, Molina and some other the members of the committee talk about the blue ribbon, and there was one guy that sat there, and he was one of the guys in that 5 panel, and he sat and says, I got a stack. He says, I got a stack 5 years ago, and here's this stack, and nothing's been done. We're going to get this blue ribbon committee, and what that does for us is I think it's more taxpayers' money for something that they, we mentioned about, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at bruises and cuts.
Yeah.
Well, we had Assemblyman Steve Fox on the show, and we were specifically talking about this. And in fact, Angelina even mentioned that, you know what, if it was up to me, I would take the supervisor and file criminal charges against him. And Assemblyman Fox was not against that at all.
No.
Okay.
And he didn't think we needed to wait.
And he also didn't agree with this blue ribbon panel and everything else. He said, let's just get in there and let's turn the thing upside down. Okay, because it needs to be fixed. And I would imagine, and your attorney, I'm sorry, what's your first name?
It's John Noland is my name.
John, really, from this lawsuit, what you really want to accomplish is turning child services upside down so that this doesn't happen to other children.
That's exactly right, Steve. I mean, typically and unfortunately, change sometimes doesn't come about without lawsuits. People typically don't like attorneys or lawyers, but frankly, lawsuits that are brought by attorneys on behalf of people like Robert are the things that actually affect change, that make things change. And our office, I'm here with Jennifer Smith. We handle many of these types of cases against children's services and other governmental entities, and it's just an ongoing battle with these folks to try and get them to establish policies and procedures that are clear for these social workers to follow, and to not go out and violate people's rights, and in this case, conduct an investigation that protects children. And in this case, that seems to be what happened, is that despite several or 60-something plus calls to the children's services, an investigation was never properly done, and this child was not protected by the system that is budgeted and put in place to protect. So, we are going to investigate this case thoroughly, and we are going to, in essence, turn this department upside down.
I appreciate that.
And hopefully affect change for children in this valley and throughout Los Angeles County, so that this doesn't happen again.
Now, I saw the report, and I looked at the calls that came in talking about Gabriel and physical abuse. And the investigators only have so much time, John, to physically respond to that, okay? And they actually would go to the residence, and then it was unsubstantiated, and the matter was closed.
Yeah, and that's where we have trouble, is, we have a teacher who would see Gabriel for a period of time throughout the day, and she clearly was recognizing the signs. We have neighbors, family members, other family members that saw the signs, and these are not trained individuals. These are people that are not trained to look for those signs, and the department sends out investigators who are trained, or supposedly trained, to find these signs, and they can't depend on what the children are telling them. They have to use their education and their background and experience to determine whether something's going on, and if they believe, if they have any doubt that there is something happening, they need to err in favor of the child to protect them. And in this case, it was just as if it was a blind eye. Nobody was paying attention to this child.
Or, don't you wonder, when a supervisor goes and responds to a residence to look at a child that's physically abused, and you can clearly see that he is physically abused?
Well, our early investigation indicates that throughout the visits, Gabriel was never really looked at. The interaction was with the mother, and discussions were with the mother, and the mother would undergo, I don't know if you would want to call it counseling, but she would have discussions with social workers about parenting and so on. But from our investigation so far, Gabriel was never examined by a social worker, and that's clearly not the standard. The social workers, when they conduct an investigation, they're required to look at the residents, look at the living conditions, and more specifically, look at the child and look for signs of abuse. And that never took place in this case. And had it taken place, I think, as Angelina mentioned, it would not take a rocket scientist to recognize that this poor little boy was being tortured and abused on a regular basis.
Yeah, which is terrible. And I didn't know that they didn't physically examine the child, that they just spoke to the mother. I had heard a couple of times that had happened, and she was able to fast talk her way through it or do whatever she did and sent them away. And they were satisfied.
Yeah, and no, that's not the case. The case is that they never did see the child and never examined the child as they're required to do. And and like I said, we are new in this investigation, and just from the short time that we've been investigating this case, we've seen numerous photographs and pictures of Gabriel that clearly indicate he was an abused child.
Absolutely.
And there's a school picture of him where in the school picture it's apparent he was being abused.
Are you talking about the one with the M?
I'm not sure what that is.
I saw a picture, and it was with him, and he's holding a M for Mother's Day. And he's got a busted lip, and you could see that he's got either like cigarette burn marks on his hand and some kind of abrasion on his head.
I'm aware of those injuries. The photograph I'm describing, he had a black eye that was clearly not.
That's the picture that I referred to earlier. I know exactly the picture that you're talking about. I can see exactly what he was wearing. I know exactly what you're talking about. And just from that picture alone, that's a child you don't want to send back home.
Correct.
Ever.
And again, if there's a doubt, if a social worker goes to a home and there's a bruise or a burn or a mark that is suspicious, it's incumbent upon them to further investigate that, and that was never done. And I can't understand how that could possibly happen.
No, and I do want to say, we have, covering news and things in the Yellow Valley, we have been at city council meetings in both cities, and both mayors, both council members, everybody is appalled at what happened. I can tell you that for sure.
No, and I've read that, and I see that, and as they should be. But, unfortunately, these things come and go, as in the news, things like this happen, and everybody rallies, and committees are formed, and study groups. Blue ribbon groups, and studies are performed, but the change doesn't really take place. And unfortunately, sometimes lawsuits are what drive those changes. So that's why we're here.
I had heard that just last year that there were 120 children that were put into foster care, into homes, and in that home, someone resided that had already been to prison or was on Megan's Law or had some, that they'd put them into homes where a sexual abuser lived.
That's true. We're familiar with that statistic, Steve. We actually have a case involving that exact fact pattern where a young girl was taken from her mother and placed in a home where there was a sex offender residing, and she was then later sexually abused by that person.
How do you screw up so big?
Yeah.
I mean, really. I don't know. That's epic.
Yeah.
It really is. I just don't understand it. John, I'd love to have you guys back on the show on another day when we can really, talk about this more.
Oh, that would be fine.
Okay.
Like I said, we will probably, as the days go by, the investigation continues, and we'll probably have a lot more information. Some that we can share, some that we can't, obviously.
No,
as you folks know.
We get it.
Yeah, you understand.
I understand. And Robert, you've always got an open invitation to come on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, and I appreciate you reaching out and taking the time. You've been listening to AV Newscast on News Talk Radio 1380, the #1 News Talk Radio program in the Antelope Valley. Have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow with Mayor James Ledford.